Hey, it's Hammer Time. On this episode of Hammer Time, we are so pleased to be joined by our brand new State Treasurer, Kimberly Yee.
Thank you, Glenn. Glad to be here.
Well, Treasurer Yee, you made history in November. You had, first of all, just a blowout win, and you became, I believe, the first Asian American ever elected statewide in the state of Arizona.
That's
Is that
right.
correct?
That's right. And I learned from an AP reporter that I also became the first Chinese American Republican woman to win any statewide office in our entire country. So truly a joy, truly an honor.
You served for a number of years in the state legislature. I'm going to get back to the state treasurer's office in a bit. But how do you feel that experience prepared you for your new role?
Well, I did. I served in the Arizona State Legislature for 8 years in the House and then in the Senate. And serving as Majority Leader, serving as a member of so many of these committees, it really puts a pulse on the state of Arizona, not just in my legislative district, which I served for North Phoenix, Glendale, and parts of Peoria, but it really allows you to see the grasp that the policyholders have in their decision making across the entire state. And that really did help prepare me for the position that I have now as a statewide official, because my little corner of Arizona is very uniquely different from various other parts of our beautiful state. And not only did I understand that better, but along the campaign trail, I saw the stories. I heard the stories of people whose priorities in one little corner might be very uniquely different from other areas. And in order to understand that and be a representative for them in the best capacity, you have to talk to the people.
I know that before you became a member of the legislature, and I'll get back to your role in really bringing the state treasurer's office back to a very respected institution. And your background is really incredible, because I believe the first time I met you, you were working for a governor.
Yes.
Not a governor in Arizona, Governor Schwarzenegger in California, I believe, doing education
Yes.
work when I was in the solar business.
That's right.
So your background, I mean, was really pretty deep into a critical issue for this state.
It is, and it was. So I worked for Pete Wilson, the governor of California, in the 90s, and then for Arnold Schwarzenegger as governor later on. And I carried many portfolios, education being one of them, state and consumer services, as well as workforce and development. But among all of those issues, the very critical issue that we really needed to deal with at that point in time was the state's budget. When we came in, it was in the red, and we needed to bring it very quickly into the black. And for someone to come in, regardless of party affiliation, bringing conservative fiscal ideas to the table and consolidating where we had waste, and making sure that we brought the best and the brightest to the table really was what we did and what we did well. At that time, yes, we did. We had a number of statewide agencies. They were stacked on top of each other. They were doing the same work that the other hand was doing. And so really looking at consolidating what California had allowed us to save on many of the resources that were going out, but it also created efficiencies for the taxpayers of California.
And then you fast forward a little bit, after the 2006 election, there were all sorts of problems in the state treasurer's office in Arizona. You were a major driver in former Treasurer Dean Martin's team.
Yes.
To really clean things out. Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yes, so following my work with Governor Schwarzenegger, I joined Dean Martin's Treasury team in 2006. And again, it was at a critical time where there was someone who had to step down from office because of things that were happening inside. And rebuilding the morale of the office and making sure that taxpayers were protected was the critical piece in that first 100 days. And we did that very well. I was blessed to be a part of that state treasurer's office back 10 years ago, and then now serving as the state treasurer today.
I'm not sure we've ever had anyone as well qualified as you to be in this role. And because the nicest compliment I could really say is you think about after Dean Martin, who did an excellent job, in large part thanks to your efforts, Governor Ducey was our state treasurer, Jeff DeWitt, Eileen Klein. That office has been run very well. Sort of that nerve center that was put together at that time has served the state well for over a decade now.
It has, and it really is a very important office for taxpayers. We manage the cash of $40 billion in the state budget. We have $15 billion in assets under management. We manage and invest the funds for local governments. That hits the local taxpayer specifically in their pocketbooks by investing money for them. This last week we rolled out wonderful news for Arizona K-12 schools. We'll be rolling out $1.75 million more per month across the state of Arizona through our endowment fund. And that's about $21 million more than last fiscal year.
That's great news, and I'm glad, fortunately our past state treasurers have ignored me when I said invest it all in Bitcoin. So I'm very glad to hear things are going well. You were a go-to person for a lot of important areas for the chamber, including tort reform, and you made quite a reputation with the U.S. Chamber for leading the charge in some of those areas. Can you maybe talk a little bit? I know that you have a business background, your family has a business background, and just sort of your thinking there in terms of doing policies that are great for small businesses in particular.
For sure. And my family does come from a small business background. Both my parents came from small businesses, and then my husband and I own a small business in the West Valley here in the metropolitan Phoenix area. Small businesses are truly, the foundation of our economy, and I have always been an advocate for our business community, and will continue to do that as state treasurer. We don't have the success in Arizona unless we continue to manage our economic foundation responsibly, and we have been doing that so well under your leadership with the Arizona Chamber of Commerce. But we will continue to do more as we look and provide smart candidates who serve in these offices, who will continue the policies that allow for businesses to come and stay in Arizona to do their work. That is what we will continue to do, and I'll continue to be a friend to businesses.
Well, there's been no greater champion when you talk about making sure that people have the foundation they need to make good financial decisions. No greater champion in the state legislature than you when it comes to financial literacy.
Thank you.
Could you please talk a little bit about that and what's next now that you have a very powerful new perch to talk about these issues?
Thank you. One of the priorities out of my new Treasury administration is financial education for our children. But I'll even broaden that. We need financial education for our adults. We need financial education for our seniors, and certainly for our veterans. And so we will create a wonderful plan going ahead. We'll unveil that when it's all ready. But really, I started that work because when I was working for our former state treasurer, Dean Martin, I went into our schools, and we unfortunately are not teaching financial education, and we're using this time where the kids are seated in these classrooms. We can use just a little piece of that time so that they can understand the basics of what credit means, how to balance their checkbook, and we're losing that opportunity if we don't move that needle. And so my bill before the legislature will make sure students graduate from high school with a basic understanding of financial education.
Well, we want to see that passed.
Thank you.
Speaking of financial literacy, I know that you've been a big supporter of the Girl Scouts.
Yes.
And right now we're in cookie season. I've got 3 Girl Scouts in my house selling a lot of cookies. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about how that experience maybe shaped where you are today?
Yes, I was an Arizona Girl Scout here in the Cactus Pine Council, was from a Brownie to a Junior Girl Scout. And so when I went to the legislature, I thought, well, what a wonderful way for women who are serving an elective office to be a role model to these young girls, to let them see they can also be involved in their communities and run for office one day. So I created Troop 1920. Troop 1920 is significant because that was the year that women were granted the right to vote. And so Troop 1920 inspires our elected women to go out into their communities, talk with girls, and let them know that they can do anything they want in their communities, and really to help them understand their importance at the table. So, Girl Scouts, for me, and back then, of course, I didn't know that it was training me, but when I was knocking on doors to sell Girl Scout cookies, it was a cold call. And now as a candidate running for office, you knock on doors in every neighborhood and it's a cold call. Fundraising, all of that was learned for me at the very, troop level as a Girl Scout. So really the girls are being empowered. They don't know what they're going to do in life when they're, going out in the world one day, but this is training them to be something really great.
Well, thank you for establishing that troop, and
You're welcome.
what an important number. A couple of final quick questions. You discussed financial literacy. A couple of goals that you have as state treasurer?
Yes, well, again, financial literacy will be the cornerstone. I plan to go out into every single community, every county, to let them know about our local government investment pool. As you know, we manage the local government funding. It's optional. And when we invest it, we pool all of these dollars together and we get a greater yield. Our office provides that investment authority, and we get that for them, and they have all of these new funds to provide for their services locally. I want to get that message out. So we have a bill before the legislature this year to make sure there is clarity in our system.
My final question, since I'm talking to a historic figure, who are your political role model or two when just who comes to mind?
You know, Sandra Day OConnor, our U.S. Justice, is not only a trailblazer for our state, but she has made a mark in history across the globe. And it was truly a privilege to bring her to the Arizona Senate when I was serving as Senate Majority Leader in my last term. She was the first female Senate Majority Leader in the country back in the 1970s. And in Arizona, it was in 1973 she served as Senate Majority Leader. It was 44 years later that I became the second female Majority Leader. And to have that, presence on the floor, Sandra Day OConnor made her mark not only in this state, but across the world. And one of the things I asked her was, what do you see differently about today's political spectrum than you saw when you were serving in the 1970s? And she said, well, if you look across the desks here on the Senate floor, you see that people proudly display an elephant if they're a Republican or a donkey if they're a Democrat. And she said back when she served in the 70s, it didn't matter what party affiliation you were. In fact, you didn't really even pay attention to what party your colleague was, because all you did was try to get the good work done. And I think that for me was a pivotal moment. I will remember those words for a long, long time. And again, it really showed that she is truly a stateswoman, someone to be remembered forever.
Treasurer Kimberly Yee, thank you for your leadership. Thanks for being on our show.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
And we're looking for many great things ahead.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you, Treasurer.